You're watching TVC Breakfast. A non-governmental organization has identified the need to deal with the country's poverty level through social protection policies.
It made its findings known at a dialogue which placed a demand on governments at all levels to improve the benefits of social protection. TVC News' Kemi Balogun has details.
Nigeria has been recently named as the world's poverty capital by the World Poverty Clock, hosting the largest number of poor people in the world, overtaking China and India, stating that 91.8 million Nigerians are extremely poor, meaning that half of Nigeria's population live on less than $1 a day. It has been established that one way of dealing with poverty is through the introduction and implementation of social protection interventions. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, provides for social protection under the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. Some of the basic principles of social protection include the state's obligations to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every citizen, to provide suitable and adequate shelter, food, reasonable national minimum wage, old age care and pensions, and sick benefits and welfare for the disabled.
There are a lot of poor people that have no help. This is the duty, is a right from the Constitution. It's cited in the Constitution that social protection is something that can contribute to the lifting and reducing the risk of the vulnerability of the most vulnerable people we have in our society.
International Labour Organization published 100 years of social protection. What we know, whether in Mexico, in Brazil, in South Africa, in China, in India, these programs have lifted people out of poverty. So we want those same programs to be implemented in Nigeria because there are too many poor people in Nigeria.
There still appears to be a lot of lapses about the benefits of the social protection program that the Nigerian government currently has, and these experts call for a lot more awareness and information for citizens as they work on challenges in order to raise solutions.
We need to look at the way and manner we have been implementing it from the lens of all of these things that we have talked about. And looking at it, what then can we say is the overarching aim of this government? Because if you take the example of China, China did their own with industrialization in mind. So it's not enough to give somebody 5,000, but after giving the 5,000, how do you also graduate the person into other things?
This is only the beginning. Nigeria has implemented this in only for 3 years now, and we're moving to the next batch. There may be some challenges here and there, but it's not to say that the money is not reaching people. Now, the accusation to say that 5,000 is not reaching people, it means it's reaching the wrong people.
These experts commend the federal government on the social protection and special intervention programs that they have currently, like Empower, the homegrown school feeding program, and so on. But they say a lot more still needs to be done to reach the poorest of the poor in order to bring down the high poverty levels. Kemi Balogun, TVC News, Abuja.
With me in the studio is Seun Awogbenle, a public policy and communications expert and co-founder Millennials Active Citizenship Advocacy Africa Network. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now let's start with the President's statement on the Inauguration Day, where Democracy Day rather, where he said that he is ready to lift about 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. But when you look at our social intervention programs, approach, is this going to achieve this aim by the president, or is just a bogus statement or an ambition statement, as some have said?
Don't forget that our reality at the moment is that based on all indices of poverty, dollar per day poverty, absolute poverty, relative poverty, and even food poverty, Nigerians are actually poor on all of these measures. And then also remember that just yesterday, Oxfam came out and said 69% of Nigerians are actually below the poverty line. That's $1.9, and that's barely 700 naira, in naira terms. So what you have is that, yes, the social intervention program that captures the Empower program, conditional cash transfer, trader money, and also the school feeding program. These are all laudable, these are laudable programs, these are laudable ideas. But the truth is that this approach is not enough to sustainably get people out of poverty, 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. And then, yes, the thing, what you need is that you need a resilient, you need a vibrant economy to actually get people out of poverty. You know, you do not need a palliative approach. And that's why some of us believe that, you know, this is merely a palliative approach. What you need is to actually look at all of the sides, including the, you know, purchasing power parity,
but the
standard of living.
is channeling so much into this. I mean, 500 billion naira?
500 billion is actually a lot. But, you know, this is not all that you need to get people out of poverty. And then that is why we believe that if government is able to invest in it, the truth is that, I mean, UNFPA says about from ages 0 to 24, 76% of Nigerians are actually, you know, between the ages 0 to 24. So what you need to get people out of poverty would mean that you need to prioritize, you know, education, you need to prioritize health and social services. That includes, you know, affordable housing, you know, portable water. These are the ways to get people out of poverty. Don't forget that when you talk about relative poverty, you're talking about the minimum standard that people need to survive. So what you have is that there's actually a connection between the standard of living and the cost of living. So once, you know, people are not able to make some certain standard of living, then their cost of living naturally shows. So what you need is that you need to look at all of the perspectives that encourage, you know, that encourage investment and businesses to thrive.
All right, then. So what other aspects now? Because there are also issues of corruption within these issues, or because remember the president's wife, that's Asha Buhari, came out to say that you know, some persons are not really benefiting from this. And for a government that says it is trying to check corruption as well, how does this really affect the program?
I mean, it affects it drastically, and that's the answer, because, I mean, it was quite disturbing when the wife of the president came out and said quite a number of people in our home state of Adamawa do not have access to these things. And then what you have is that the vulnerable group, those that really need it, the poor people, do not have access to it. So what it means, there's some diversion going on. You know, there's some misappropriation going on. And I think the government, I mean, the president himself should not have, you know, shouldn't sit down and just watch this statement file. But I think he needs to actually investigate the effectiveness of it. Because what you have is that now that you have renewed, or now that we are in the next level, you want to also sustain the program of budgeting 500 billion naira annually. I mean, that's quite a lot of a budget of, I mean, quite about 9.2. Don't forget that in that budget of 9.1 trillion naira, about 2 trillion of that budget is also going to, you know, budget servicing. Yes, and then debt servicing. Don't forget that, you know, more than 50% of that budget is equally going into recurrent expenditure. So what you have to also actually spend on capital expenditure, and, you know, also to maintain the, you know, the SIP is quite minimal.
One other question that Nigerians are asking is the issue of legislation. These programs or these initiatives or projects, as lofty as they are, when you start them and then they don't have the backing of the law, at the end of the expiration of this administration, someone might come up with something and throw them away. Absolutely. And then if there's no sustainability, then the agenda of raising or taking 100 million people out of poverty, someone has to start all over again.
Absolutely. Because what you have is that, as it stands, there is actually no legislation, like you rightly pointed out, giving validity to what you have as the social intervention program. It means that it is just a coinage of this government. So if this government, you know, subsists by 2023, I mean, there's fear that there wouldn't be sustainability or continuity, as the case may be. And this has always been some of the, you know, basis of our problem. The fact that, you know, most people do not see government as a continuum, they see it as a destination. And government is meant to be regarded as a continuum, because, I mean, the 10-year long-term plan of the government would actually span, you know, the term of this government. So what you need is that you need government to actually formalize it, you know, perhaps to take a bill to the National Assembly and have them institutionalize the social intervention program. But what we are saying is that it is not just about institutionalizing the program. It is also about paying, you know, adequate attention to the education of Nigerians, paying attention to their health, and paying attention to, you know, social services, because investment in people is actually much more important. And don't forget, we cannot completely jettison infrastructure as well, because there's serious infrastructure deficit. You know, all of these things come together to give us a wholesome approach to actually tackling the issue of poverty.
Right. Thank you so much, Sheun Awugbenle, for your time on TVC Breakfast.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye.